Hello folks, and welcome to your British Grand Prix weekend warm-up with me, Will, him, Lawrence, her, Melissa. It's lovely to have you back.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, obviously.
And it's good to be back with fans as well, isn't it, mate?
It's so good. There were fans here today on a Thursday where there was no track action in the grandstand, making a lot of noise. It was brilliant.
Yeah, huge atmosphere even on the drive-in coming through the campsites this morning.
Oh my God, it's amazing. Like, we're going to have full capacity here, which is just phenomenal. Like, Silverstone isn't Silverstone without the fans, and 140,000 of them. It's one of the biggest sporting events I think that's happened in England. It's just what we need right now.
Breaking out of the pandemic, of course. Lots to talk about this weekend, not least the fact there will be a format change. We will talk about that a little bit later in the show, but also, of course, the fact that little beauty got launched earlier today, the 2022 F1 car, or at least Formula One's interpretation of what next year's car will look like.
Yeah, it was nice for the drivers to get a nice close-up look of, for the first time, a full-scale model of the 2022 car, and I think it's starting to build a bit more excitement into next year when we hope these new regulations will hopefully close up the field and allow for closer racing.
Yeah, all the drivers have been talking about it today. Melissa, what was your general impression from the guys?
I mean, I think they're just happy to see something new, excited for a new era. Obviously, no one's getting ahead of themselves that everything's going to change straight away with a brand new car, but you know, you've got to be positive about change and making it exciting for the fans, because that's, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do.
And of course, it's not becoming a spec championship, and having spoken to a couple of the teams today, they said what's really interesting is that what Formula One has determined to be their take on the rules isn't entirely the same as what they have. So what they're already running through CFD already looks a bit different to what we've seen today, which is pretty cool.
But I think that's pretty exciting. Now, I know when I got into Formula One, just seeing when teams had new noses or different takes on the same regulations, that was, I think, what was quite exciting.
When you could paint all the cars white and you'd know which one was which because all the designs were different.
Exactly.
That's what it's about, isn't it? Yeah. Now, talking about different cars this weekend, we find ourselves down at Alpine. And I spoke to Fernando Alonso earlier today, who's had a good run of things for the last couple of races in Austria, really finding his feet with the team. The same, however, can't be said for Esteban Ocon, who started off the season fantastically but has just gone off the boil a little bit, so much so he said he needed something different from the team. He needed a new chassis. He has that new chassis for this weekend. However, he will have just 1 hour to get to grips with it.
Yeah, I have to thank all the team for all the hard work that they've put in. You know, we come here with a fresh mind, ready to restart and think about that new format. Of course, it's been a good couple of years racing here on my side. So yeah, finishing 6th last year was 6 and 8 actually, scored both times. It was quite fun. So yeah, I look forward to be racing here hard again.
Good to hear then from Esteban down here at Haas. Melissa, you spoke to Mick earlier today.
I did, and he's very much looking forward to Sprint this weekend because obviously it's a new format. And with where Haas are, they have got nothing to lose, and that's what he said. Like, they can literally go all out. I know there's certainly going to be some drivers who are going to be a bit more cautious, a bit more conservative, because they do have to think about the race on Sunday. I'm not saying that Mick doesn't have to think about that, but he's like, we've got nothing to lose, so like, we're just going to go for it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for Haas, isn't it?
Well, you were talking to Nikita earlier. What did you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, Nikita's had a really weird time of it in Austria. They threw so many bizarre setup changes onto the car for him that he ended up getting a bit confused and a bit lost. And I said to him, you know, are the team leading you or can you lead them? And he said it's actually a very collaborative process between him and the team, and they were just trying as much as they could in Austria, and ultimately none of it really worked for him. So yeah, there's a lot for him to kind of get his head around. He says he really hopes that he can lead the team, you know, take them on the direction that he wants to, but it's just hard for both of them at the moment because there's not really much underneath them that they can work with. The one thing I think standing in both of their favours, of course, they've just come up from F2, so they know a lot about sprint races and how to sort of approach those sprint races, but it is a kind of a different version of a sprint in F1, not just, you know, not a sprint qualifying rather than the sprint races they had in F2. So,
I think, yeah, and I just think having the unknown of a sprint and how that's going to affect the whole format of the weekend, I think it's what these guys, especially down that end of the pit lane, is exciting them because it's opportunity.
That's it. There's a lot of people who thought that they'd just qualify sort of 19th and 20th in the qualifying session, then just park it up and not bother doing the sprint qualifying. And as it is, they're like, no, this is actually an opportunity for us to, you know, to do something decent. Could it be something decent for AlphaTauri? You spoke to Mr. Gasly.
I did, and he's racing at one of his favourite tracks, he says. So, you know, he's super excited. I think everyone is just super excited to be back here. They've got fans again. I know that he's cautious about how it's going to go. He said that he doesn't think the tyres are really going to make that much of a difference.
Of course, because we've got the new construction on the rear
Exactly, we've got the new
Pirellis.
tyres. So I did ask him about that, but he's like, doesn't think it's going to make much difference. So yeah, I think he's just looking forward to racing and seeing what they can do. That, you know, he's had some strong performances, but this is very different to Austria, where we've been for the last 2 races. So no one really knows what to expect.
No, what was Yuki saying?
Well, I think he's quite glad that Silverstone is very different to Austria, because the car felt horrible, he said, in Austria, and I think he's hoping that it feels a little bit better here. Faster corners, it's a different layout, so that's good news for him. But I think what he was hoping for from this weekend is that he can hit the ground running in FP1, because as a rookie, with 1 hour's practice, it's going to hurt him more than most, really.
Yeah.
And if he can get up to speed very quickly, then obviously it's better for him. But if he's struggling in FP1, it could be a very long weekend.
And as we will explain later, FP1 is all they've got. That's it. 1 hour to set up the cars this weekend under this new race weekend format. You'll love the traffic paradise on the way into the circuit, though, won't you? Silverstone's
We all
famous
love
for
that.
one thing.
We all love that.
So to Mercedes, and you spoke to Valtteri.
I did speak to Valtteri. He's obviously had a great race out in Austria. He was P2, so he's coming here really strong, feeling confident. But again, I think that he's being cautious about the whole sprint thing, because I mean, there's just so much talk, I guess, about his seat and everything, that he's just like, I know he's trying not to think about that, but I know he's just like, and he needs to do his best. And
From the impression that you got, though, from talking to him today, do you think that's starting to get to him? Is that at the forefront of his mind, or can he actually concentrate on the racing and let all of that sort of flow over? Given that Toto said he's not going to make a decision till the summer.
I just don't know how he can not let it have an effect on him, because it's been talked about so much. And yes, we're not going to hear a decision here at Silverstone, we know that from what George Russell said, but psychologically, when someone's questioning your place in the team and your seat, then it must have an effect. But Valtteri, I mean, he's a professional, and he will get behind that car, and he does what he does best, so, you know, we'll see.
Absolutely. And Lawrence, you spoke to Lewis Hamilton earlier today as well. Yeah,
he was rocking some cool kicks and some quite extraordinary trousers.
All about the shoes.
So it's all about the fashion for me, really. He had a big week leading up to the British Grand Prix, launching the report from the Hamilton Commission.
Yes.
They made 10 recommendations of how they can hopefully improve the opportunities for people in the black community. So I think that's what he feels like he can sign in this new contract, still continue to use his profile as an opportunity to inflict change, really, in the future.
Yeah, Formula One themselves, of course, making pledges along with the Hamilton Commission's finding during the week. So a big week, I think, for inclusion in the sport. But of course, for Lewis Hamilton, this is a race he's won every British Grand Prix since 2014, except for the one in 2018 that Sebastian Vettel won.
That's incredible.
And except for the Silverstone, the 70th anniversary Grand Prix.
I mean, this stat is falling apart, Will.
He's won all of them, but one since 2014, because the 70th anniversary wasn't. I'm no good at. Let's just hear from Lewis.
Want everyone to have the best weekend, want to give them the best result if we can, and want everyone to get home safe. So always just want to encourage people to continue to wear the masks.
What do you think is the best result this weekend? This traditionally has been a place where you guys have gone well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had a lot performance taken away since the last time we were here, and yeah, I think it's going to be a tough one. The Red Bull's been so strong in these past races. I'm hoping that we can potentially close the gap a little bit, but who knows? Maybe they bring another upgrade this weekend, and but we will see tomorrow. And also the new format this weekend maybe throws a spanner in the works, and you know, if we can get that right, that could bode well for us.
A little bit less practice, a bit more racing. I guess for a racer driver, that must be a good thing, right?
It depends if you're used to your car starting on the right foot or being a bit of a mess. But I'm hoping with all the work we've done, hopefully the car starts in the right place.
Mercedes, of course, have updates this weekend, but in Austria, Lewis didn't seem to think that was going to do them much good.
No, I think he's trying to play down the size of the package that they're bringing here, and he was also suggesting actually today that Red Bull might bring some as well. So I guess it might all just level up. But you know what? If this is their last package, then Mercedes are a team that have always managed to maximise the package they've got. They're quickly understanding it. So that in itself is a performance gain if they can do that.
Do we really think they're not going to have a specific Monza package? Really?
Well, okay. You know, when we talk about packages, we don't. Monza packages by default something that they always have.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Anyway, we'll see how that pans out. You, Melissa, got to speak to both of the Red Bull boys.
I did, of course. Our championship leader, Max Verstappen's coming here. I mean, the guy is just on incredible form at the moment,
and so serene.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. So much more of a mature Max than I think we've ever seen before, and you can't fault his driving. Like, that guy deserves to be where he is at the moment. And
100%.
you know, I asked him, I was like, did you have a chance to celebrate his wins? He's like, I'm not bothered about celebrating. Like, I just, you know, the win's a win. I did some private stuff with my family, that's fine. But
he's looking long term, isn't he?
Yeah, but he is feeling confident. He did say he's feeling confident coming into Silverstone. So yeah, we'll have to see what he does. But he's I guess has got the most to lose with the sprint if anything goes wrong.
Well, but he's got more than a win.
True.
But as he's always said, one DNF.
Yeah.
And Lewis and Mercedes are straight back into it. What about Checo? How was he today?
I mean, he was fine. I mean, he's not been here in a little while, right?
No.
No, it's been a couple of races he missed obviously last year with COVID, testing positive.
Yeah.
As I said, the effing COVID, he said.
Oh.
I remember that. I remember last year, all we were doing is waiting for Nico Hülkenberg to run into the paddock. Remember, waiting for him to get into the car.
I remember.
So poor Checo in a flat or an apartment, wasn't he, for 2 weeks?
Checo was,
isolating.
He was quarantining, whatever.
But yeah, I mean, he is looking forward, obviously, to racing here again, like everyone is, having fans here again. But I think he just said he hasn't got the experience here in a Red Bull.
Well,
like, this is his first time racing in a Red Bull around Silverstone, and I guess maybe that puts him at a slight disadvantage.
He has been saying, though, that where he's been taking the lead from Max on setup for pretty much all the year so far, he has now started to determine his own direction with the car and with the setup. So should hopefully play into his hands. Now to Aston Martin, as we are down here, their first race at Silverstone since rebranding themselves as Aston Martin, and it's not all been plain sailing, but it has started to look a bit more positive of late. I spoke to Sebastian earlier today. He loves this track, loves it. It's so fast, it's so flowing, and of course he won here in 2018 for Ferrari, and just adores it. He's really looking forward to the fans being back. And
I remember that win.
But will it be that kind of a weekend for Aston Martin? It's going to be a tough one for them. And I know you spoke to Lance, who wasn't feeling overly positive about it.
No, he was quite mellow. Obviously, he's like, it's our team home race and it'll be great to see fans. But I think he was just really kind of biding his time and not wanting to be too optimistic.
Downplaying expectations, or genuinely not?
I think he said that they are not having as great a season as they had last year, and something's not quite right.
But that's an understatement.
But you can tell that he's not particularly happy, as much as he probably doesn't want to say that.
But none of them are they? Because they were expecting to fight for third in the championship this year, and when they realised that wasn't going to happen, it was like, well, this is going to be miserable.
Yeah, and I do think they've accepted that this is going to be a tougher year, but I do want to point out for the fact that in the press conference today, Lance, we saw a side of his personality we rarely see.
He was hilarious.
His attempt at a Scottish accent,
not just any Scottish accent, Braveheart,
was brilliant, frankly.
It was
so good that Daniel Ricciardo, who would ordinarily be very good at accents, felt he couldn't top it.
Which version of Daniel Ricciardo are you referring to? Because I've never seen any version of Daniel Ricciardo that's good at any accent other than Australian.
Always tries, though.
Yes, but that doesn't mean he's good.
I think it is, because I can't do accents.
Well, neither can Daniel.
I'm with Lawrence. I can't do an accent, so please no one make me. I would be exactly that, Daniel.
Neither can Daniel.
Well, that's why he tried. He does more than I do.
But at least Lance tried to do the most overbearingly awful Scottish accent, which was a Mel Gibson Scottish accent in Braveheart, so it's always going to sound affected. It's like trying to do a London accent and saying you're going to be Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins. That's what it was. And Daniel tried to do David Coulthard, which is quite a difficult Scottish accent to do, and he completely got it wrong and then ended up hiding under his jacket. But it was brilliant. Anyway, Daniel Ricciardo.
Oh, I spoke to Daniel Ricciardo.
You did, and we're going to hear from Daniel Ricciardo, and I completely forgot about that. And so let's talk instead about Lando first and foremost. Who spoke to Lando? You spoke to Lando?
I spoke to Lando.
You spoke to Lando.
Bless him, he looked knackered today. He had to do
He's
a lot.
had a horrible week.
He's had a tough couple of days. Obviously, what happened with him at Wembley, and you know, it's understandable that it shook him up a bit, and no one should have to go through that. And then he's come here, and it's great. I think that he's got the fans here, because I think that will give him the boost that he needs. But he's a man in demand. He's had such a mega season. There's so much going on for him at the moment, and he's probably got to me last in the pen, and I felt a bit bad for him because he looked almost talked out.
But he said he's not sleeping since what happened at Wembley, and you know, it's really started to affect him. Did you? I mean, what kind of a vibe did you get? Just that he was kind of tired with the day, or that he's not in a good place? Because I don't know. I didn't get to speak to him. I didn't see him today.
I do think that it has. Of course, he's felt it, because something like that is going to impact you.
Yeah.
I didn't specifically ask him on camera how he was, but I know that he has found it tough in the last couple of days.
Horrid. And Zach Brown, of course, their talismanic leader, not here this weekend, tested positive for COVID-19, so we wish him a speedy recovery. Daniel Ricciardo, we are going to hear from him right now, but a brief précis on him and his sort of feelings coming in. He's
on great form. I think he's loving it. He was bouncing, he literally came dancing over to me like a ballerina in the pen, and it was wonderful. He's feeling great going into this. He's got some kind of re-energized, reinvigorated spirit, and I think that's just wonderful.
I wonder what kind of ballerina Daniel Ricciardo would make. Do you reckon he can do that thing where he gets up on his toes? You're going to say that? I thought you were about to do that.
Dancing around like that.
That's brilliant. I love it.
Enough of this. Racing driver quotes.
Qualifying this year definitely hasn't been something that I've necessarily been amazing at. So, but I don't want to say that like I'm looking at it negatively. But I probably have no reason to believe that it'll be better or worse. I don't know. I'll just see what happens. I'll be ready to push hard, and hopefully it means a better position on the grid this time.
I mean, you know that McLaren have a huge amount of support around here, so I think that's even just going to be cheering you on is going to help, right?
It's going to be cool having fans back and stuff. That'll be, I'm excited to have some crowds, and we kind of forgot, you know, like Austria 2, we got to feel that, so looking forward to it.
And so to Alfa Romeo, where, Melissa, there was news in the week.
There was news. They have just agreed a new multi-year deal. They are remaining as Alfa Romeo with the what was formerly Sauber.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's amazing for them, right?
It's huge, because there had been some question marks earlier in the year about whether it would go somewhere else in the paddock. So positive for them, positive for the drivers. And you spoke to Kimi.
Yeah, who was talking about the fact that Alfa Romeo the new deal gives them a lot of stability in the years to come. It allows the team to plan. Obviously, there's the financial implications as well, where they can keep improving. They made a massive step this year from last year to this year, and they need to keep making bigger steps, and having that kind of manufacturer back in makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
Kimi was actually in quite a chatty mood today.
Really?
Yeah, he's
that never happens.
I know. He obviously wasn't making predictions about how the new format's going to be, but I think he's quite excited about the opportunities that present itself. And there's
Hello, George.
Hello, George.
Any news?
Any news?
The sun is shining.
And you got a new helmet design as well.
That's all we can ask for.
New helmet design.
New helmet.
That's news.
Oh, it's right there. Oh, look at that.
This has been queued
It's like we
up
planned it.
beautifully.
Comedy's all about timing.
All about timing.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
We catching you out on a cycle of the track?
Going for a little cycle. They've just been in the fan zone. It's been amazing.
Oh, how many fans? I don't know if you guys can hear this. How many fans are there in the fan zone?
There were a lot. But no, it was really cool. Gave me goosebumps, to be honest. It's what it's about.
Awesome, man. Cool.
Have a good one.
Don't know if you heard any of that, but he basically said goosebumps from. I should have chucked him up.
We should have done.
But yeah, said goosebumps to have the fans back in the grandstands. Great stuff. Now, quickly, Giovinazzi, I spoke to him. He says the sprint quali could really play into their hands, because they've been terrible at qualifying for the last couple of races. Really quick in practice, good in the race. Strategy gets them on the edge of the points. Actually, this whole new format might play into their hands. They can make their way up during the sprint on Saturday. be in a good place on Sunday. Pow, points. So actually, Alfa feeling pretty good. Williams, on the other hand, this might be a difficult weekend for them. You spoke to George and to Nicholas Latifi, and I've got to ask, coming here, their car hates wind.
Yes.
We are up high on a former RAF airbase.
Yes.
And all it does here is either rain when you least expect it or blow a gale, and it's always windy up here. So is it going to be a miserable weekend for them?
Yes, I asked George about that. He said, well, Austria it's not windy, Silverstone it is windy, so you can probably guess how this weekend's going to go.
Yeah.
It's going to be much trickier for them here, but again he's in the camp of the new format offers opportunities.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have to wait and see, but that car has been an improvement over time.
And what about down here at Ferrari? And that chap there, Mr. Charles Leclerc, you spoke to him earlier today. I spoke to Carlos Sainz. Hello, chap. Before we hear from them, because we are going to hear from both drivers, France was miserable for them.
Yeah.
And I know both of them were worried about the cooler temperatures here this weekend, potentially on this track.
Yeah, they're really worried that it could go back to how it was in France. And they obviously had massive issues with their tyres there. I know Charles did say that he thinks they've kind of they've analysed it, they think they've almost kind of got it sorted out, but it is an issue here. But those guys had an amazing race here last year. Charles does think it was a bit of luck, but, you know, who knows what they could do here.
No, exactly. And the last couple of races in Austria, Lawrence, were fantastic for them. Of course, they focused more on race pace than on qualifying, and with this weekend format here being so much attuned towards the race, your sprint qualifying, which is in itself a kind of small little contest all of its own, is that focus going to pay dividends for them this weekend? Let's hear from Charles Leclerc, let's hear from Carlos Sainz, because the temperature looks like it's going to increase throughout the weekend, hopefully taking them into a sweet spot as they focus on that race pace for the weekend.
We are learning quite a bit since the beginning of the season, especially after Paul Ricard, where we've had a big problem with the front tires. This is a track where we could have a similar type of problem. So it will be very interesting for us how much progress we've made in these few weeks analyzing this issue and see whether we manage to get rid of that problem or not.
And obviously we've got a new format here with sprint. Do you feel like you're going to have enough time in the car setting up, getting it right before qualifying? Because obviously we've only got the one practice session.
It's going to be very tricky. Only FP1, so it will be very important to get the setup right in that session, because after that you get to stay with that car for the rest of the weekend. So I'm really looking forward to it, though. I think it's exciting to have a bit of a different weekend. Only one FP1 qualifying straight away, then a sprint race on Saturday, where we'll be able to push flat out for 17 laps straight, and then the main race on Sunday.
Starting to deliver some good results recently, so just keen on keeping the momentum up. I think the sprint race is just going to bring one more start, one more possibility of moving forward, or one more possibility of having an accident in lap one. You know, like there's always more incidents in lap one, so it's gonna, you know, just spice up things a bit. And the whole weekend format, you know, for the strategies for everyone involved, it's just more curveballs, more things to think about. The strategy with tires, it's more complicated for sure, and it's I think it's more good fun.
And that's about it from all of the teams and the drivers, but of course there is a really big talking point for this weekend, and that is the format change. Formula One will see a brand new race weekend format here in Silverstone, and it begins on Friday. The very first session is as it's always been, free practice 1 hour for all of the teams and drivers. The next session though on Friday is qualifying, what we normally would have seen on Saturday, and the rules are exactly as we know them. Q1, slowest 5 drivers are eliminated. Q2, the next slowest 5 drivers are eliminated, leaving us with 10 drivers in Q3 to fight over the fastest times to determine the grid for Saturday's sprint. Oh, and it should be mentioned that just as in weekends gone by, when qualifying begins, Parc Fermé begins. You may not change your car after that point. Lawrence, take us through Saturday.
Then we take the cars out of Parc Fermé to do one more practice session in the morning. That will last an hour. Then the cars will go back into Parc Fermé before they come out again for the sprint on Saturday afternoon.
And how will that sprint work?
So that's going to be a 17 lap race here at Silverstone, take about 25 to 30 minutes long. the guys will mostly do it on one tyre unless obviously they have an issue like a puncture and they have to do a pit stop. But the idea is no mandatory pit stops. It should be fast, it should be furious.
And 17 laps because that's the closest to
100 kilometres.
100 kilometres. And what is the purpose of this sprint, Melissa?
I mean, it sets the grid for Sunday, which I have the easy job of explaining. Nothing changes on Sunday. It is the race as you know it on Sunday, which is, you know, going to be amazing, I'm sure. This is obviously the first of 3 sprints that we've got this year. You know, it's giving fans a chance to see something different, and that's what we need. We need things that are different in here. If it works great, and it could set the format for what comes in the future. If it doesn't, F1 is open to things, you know, to dropping it if it doesn't work. We just need people just to give it a chance, I think, and see, and not judge it before it's happened.
This is it, and everybody's already said that if it needs tweaking, it will be tweaked, but for the moment, I know there are a lot of questions. Obviously, we've already determined the cars are in parc fermé from the start of qualifying for the remainder of the weekend. You can make some small changes. There's a list of the changes that you can make to it, but essentially, the car will remain unchanged from the start of qualifying till the end of the weekend. For the sprint itself, though, Lawrence, you're our Saturday man.
So hold on, Lawrence, what happens if someone crashes out on Saturday?
Or like a tyre blows up or their engine goes.
Yeah, or they get penalised.
No, so they'll be classified in the order in which they finish or the order that they retired. So essentially, if you're the first one out of the sprint, that means you'll start last for Sunday's Grand Prix. And then if you're the second one to retire, then you'll be second last on the grid.
Seems pretty simple.
So nothing that happens can affect where they finish.
It's all pretty simple.
Essentially, everyone gets to start the Grand Prix, no matter what happens in the sprint.
Right, who do we think the sprints might actually favour?
Oh, good one. I think it's going to favour the guys towards the back because I feel they can take the most risk. I think for the teams at the front, they've got a championship to fight for, so they'll probably be on the more cautious side. And I think when you've got those 2 things working in tandem, it could be some spice.
And let's not forget the top 3 drivers in the sprint score points. 3 for the winner, 2 for second, 1 for third place. Melissa, who do you expect to shine?
Oh, you want who's going to be top in
No,
the
just who do we think the sprints will favour? Who will come out of it doing well?
You know what? I would like to see the McLarens coming out of this doing well.
Yeah.
I think like Lawrence said, like lower teams don't have a lot to lose, but McLaren are, although they are fighting, they're on the podium stuff, I still think they're at a point where they can go for it and they haven't got much to lose.
I think it's going to really help Daniel Ricciardo, somebody who has struggled in qualifying but on race pace has looked phenomenal. Could that actually make his Sundays that much better, actually allow him that opportunity to get over his qualifying disappointments, start him further up the grid? The same true for Ferrari, who have admitted they're looking at their race pace over their qualifying pace. We saw them sacrifice their quali positions in Austria in both races to benefit their Sundays, and they both told me today they're viewing this sprint as an extra first sector of the race, an extra first sort of segment of the Grand Prix. That's how they're going to approach it. And maybe even Alfa Romeo, who've looked so good, just can't get their qualifying sorted. I think those guys who struggled with quali, this could really play into their hands. And
I do think this is a race where you can maybe sacrifice qualifying a little bit, because of course you can overtake round here. So if you want to maybe put a bit more emphasis on in FP1 and FP2 on long run pace, you might actually really gain here more than in any other race, because of the format change.
Oh, I'm excited.
I am too. Let's get our predictions in before the end of the show. Lawrence, I'll start with you.
I think it's going to be a Lewis Hamilton victory on Sunday. I think he's going to make progress through the sprint, and that's going to set him up nicely for the race.
Nice. Melissa?
I was also, because we're at Silverstone, it's British Grand Prix, how can you not put a British driver on the podium? So I also want to go Lewis win. But I also am going to stick Lando up there, and perhaps Checo.
Oh, nice. I'm going to say Lewis wins the sprint, Max wins the Grand Prix.
Okay.
Keep it interesting. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for your insight, as always. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. Enjoy this weekend. It will be a little bit different. It's going to be incredibly exciting to see how this very first sprint format weekend plays out. Join us for everything on your F1 channels for this British Grand Prix. But for now, from all 3 of us, that is your lot.